you need to double check the focus and the tone so that we're in focus this week, unlike last week.
Good.
Our first story this week comes from South Korea and Astell Kern, who we know as makers of very high-end portable players, otherwise known as DAPs. This week they've announced their first dongle DAC, which is called the AK USB-C Dual DAC. Now it's called the Dual DAC because it's got two Cirrus Logic high-def DACs inside. Now this serves as a reminder that DACs themselves, the chips, really don't have a sound of their own. There is no such thing as the Sabre sound or the AKM sound or the Cirrus Logic sound, because inside a DAC there's also power supplies and the analog output stage. Now Astell Kern have many years of experience in designing analog output stages for headphones because they've done so with their range of DAPs since 2013, 2012 maybe. So with this new USB-C dongle DAC, they've paid special attention to the output stage. The enclosure itself is all metal. I believe the whole thing weighs 25 grams. The cable in between the USB-C connector and the sort of decoder, headphone amplifier part, that cable has been shielded against noise. It's also made of or covered in aramid fiber to improve strength and durability, which is often a weakness with some of these USB-C adapters. Not all of them, but some of them. And the other thing that Astell Kern want us to know about their new dongle DAC is that it is capable of decoding PCM up to 32-bit 384 kilohertz, DSD up to DSD 256. Now that's useful if you're plugging it directly into a USB socket on a laptop. But if you're connecting it to an Android phone, as covered in my previous video on this matter, the Android operating system will resample pretty much everything to 48 kilohertz, no matter what the source file is. And the only way around that I know of is USB Audio Player Pro, which is an app, a paid app that loads in its own USB driver and stops, or rather bypasses, Android's resampling. So USB Audio Player Pro is bit perfect, the Android operating system is not. So you need to know this if you're buying any dongle DAC. It's not just about this Astell Kern. Anyway, the AK USB-C Dual DAC dongle from Astell Kern will sell for $150 US. It starts shipping in the US in May, but the UK, for some reason, get it a bit earlier. It starts shipping there in April. My last trip outside of Germany was just over a year ago, and it was to France to visit Focal's two factories. And at the Saint Etienne factory, I saw headphones being designed, assembled, made, all of those things in these sort of very bright glass walled rooms. And we weren't allowed to film, understandably, probably to protect Focal's IP. And I guess I might have seen the early stages of their new headphone model, which was announced this week, which is called the Clear MG. Now the aim, if you're designing a loudspeaker or headphone driver, or one of the aims, is to make that driver as light and as rigid as possible, because that can lower distortion of the driver. Now for this new Clear MG headphone, Focal have apparently developed a new magnesium driver, because magnesium is very light and very rigid. And if you turn it on its side, apparently it has a sort of M-shaped profile. And that profile is also mirrored in the insert that goes over the top of the driver inside the ear cup. Now, kind of bizarrely, the press release also promises the new MG version of the Clear will deliver a sharper sound, which I think is kind of an unfortunate choice of words to describe a headphone, because you don't want needles and pins. But I guess they mean crisper, cleaner, and more transparent. Now, the other thing about the Clear MG is that it has a 55 ohm input impedance, which makes it very friendly to portable players and dongle DACs. Now the MG is available now, and I'm told that pricing comes in at $1,500 US or 1,500 euros. Now for me, one of the most baffling manufacturer names out there at the moment is Moon by Simaudio, because I never know if Moon is the manufacturer, if Simaudio is the manufacturer, or if it's like a collective manufacturer name. Anyway, they're from Canada. They've just announced an update to their 280D streaming DAC, although the press release was a bit vague on what's been updated. So I'm just going to roll through all of it and you can work out, what's been updated and what hasn't. First thing to note is that Moon by Simaudio, or Moon, don't tell us what kind of DAC chip is inside. And I think that's brilliant because it stops people shopping on the basis of DAC chips. Because as I said earlier, that can lead you down the wrong path, because you could have a very advanced DAC chip and it'd be poorly implemented. It could have weak power supplies. It could have a very basic analog output stage. I don't think Moon by Simaudio will have done that here. In fact, I believe their analog output stage has what's called a third order filter on it, and it's balanced, and it might be dual mono, but I'm a bit hazy on that part of it. But here come the numbers again. So like the Astell Kern dongle DAC, the Moon 280D does 32-bit 384 kilohertz PCM and DSD 256. But again, I've got to wonder, who has files of this resolution? I mean, and even if you do, how many do you have? Most people probably are operating with 95% at least 16-bit 44 kilohertz PCM. So really, when you're choosing a DAC, whether it's a streaming DAC or not, you want to know that it makes Redbook CD quality 1644 sound good before you worry about its high-res capabilities. At least that's the way I look at it. Now, on the back of the 280D are 6 hardwired inputs, and they include AES EBU, coax, Toslink, and USB. There's also Ethernet. There's also Wi-Fi. There's also aptX Bluetooth. And mention of Ethernet and Wi-Fi brings us to the streaming module, which sits inside this DAC. Moon call theirs the Mind module, and inside the 280D is the Mind 2 version of this module, which allows Moon to develop their own app, which integrates Tidal Masters, so it does MQA, and Qobuz, and UP&P. The module is also Roon ready. It also does Apple AirPlay 2 and Spotify Connect. But perhaps best of all is that this app has the best name of any app I've ever heard of. It's called the Moon Mind Controller. Mind Controller, a genius. Anyway, the 280D is available now and it's selling for 3,000 Great British pounds. Okay, so our final story relates to the Munich High-End Show 2021. Now, we already know that it's not happening in May, and that this year, because of the pandemic, it's happening in September. Now, I got a press release this week that says all exhibitor booths are completely ausverkauft, and ausverkauft means sold out, which is great. I mean, it's good to see the high-end industry really sort of bouncing back so quickly and so effortlessly. Also, good news for people like me is that even though it's a 4-day show and normally 1 day is trade only, this year 2 days are going to be given over to trade and press, which makes my job a little bit easier. Now, I love the Munich High-End Show. I really do, and it's probably my #1 pick on the calendar because I get to see a whole bunch of friends and acquaintances that I don't get to see anywhere else in the world. So I get to hang out with my good buddy Michael Livornia of Twittering Machines an awful lot, and we get to swap notes and share stories and that kind of thing. And you can't beat an in-person connection when you're trying to learn about other people's experiences. But that in-person connection is still problematic this year in the middle of the pandemic, because if you're watching this from the UK, if you're an audiophile and you're of a certain age, you've probably already had your first jab, your first vaccination. You might even be on your way to your second vaccination. And that might also be true of people in the USA. So if you're in the UK or in the US, you might think, well, we're almost home free. But in Europe, things are not that great because Germany is just entering a third wave of infections. At the moment, supermarkets are open and what else is open? Blumenladen, so florists, and hairdressers are open. And then we're going to ease restrictions even more, but in the last 2 weeks since the kids went back to school, infections have skyrocketed again, or new infections have, which means that the Berlin area has put the brakes on any easing of lockdown restrictions. And this is a picture you can find nationwide. Look at the graphs of new infections on Google. We're into a third wave. And that third wave is already well underway in Austria, which has its border with Bavaria, and with the Czech Republic, which also borders Bavaria. The French are struggling. You know, as of today, they're on the brink of possibly, maybe, introducing another national lockdown. So the picture in Europe is not great. And I've written about this on my website. So if you want to see graphs and charts of the state of the pandemic in Europe, go there, please. I'll put the link in the description box below. The other thing you need to know, and the reason I think that things are not as good in Europe as they are in the UK and the US, is because the vaccination program in the EU is rolling out at a glacial pace. So only 4% of people have had both jabs in Germany. Less than 10% have had one jab. And that's a picture you'll see all over Europe right now. And it's kind of depressing and it's a little bit frustrating, especially when we're trying to think about going to a hi-fi show in September. But if you're coming from the UK, and especially if you're coming from the US or Asia, you're making travel plans now or maybe in the next couple of months. So you need to keep an eye on the COVID situation in Europe before really committing. I mean, I really, 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 really want Munich high-end to happen this September. But at the moment, with the vaccination rate being as slow as it is, I don't think even half the population are going to be vaccinated by August. I think Angela Merkel made a promise late last year, that, was it all Germans would have been offered a vaccination by the end of August or the start of September, just before the election comes up, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that at the moment, we're not tracking towards that at all. I don't want to paint a picture of doom and gloom because I really, like I say, I want this event to happen because it's my favorite event. It's brilliant. It's a fantastic event. It's all gone.